Hi guys, welcome back. Two guys get fired from their city's military police force and are sent to work in a junkyard to pay off the damage from a mission that had gone wrong. Most people would probably accept the situation and move on, but Chance Furlong and Jake Clawson did something you did not see coming. Underneath their salvage yard, they secretly built an advanced fighter jet, without any government funding or any sort of company backing them, using discarded parts, military leftovers and whatever used materials they could find. And that was the TurboKat. One of the most impressive aircraft that was ever created in a cartoon. And when you actually break down how it was built, how it takes flight and what it can do, it becomes clear that this flying machine was much more than just a cool looking jet. So let's take a look at the anatomy of the TurboKat.
Cats! Those pests!
What exactly is the TurboKat, and how was it built? The first thing that made the TurboKat special was the fact that it should not even exist. Unlike most fictional fighter jets, the TurboKat was not really designed by a military research program or a giant corporation. It was built by two mechanics who worked in a salvage yard. Chance T-Bone Furlong and Jake Razor Clawson were once elite pilots in the Enforcers, Megacat City's military police force. They were in fact among the best pilots in the organisation, and after a mission had ended badly, Commander Ferrell removed them from active duty and sent them to work in a junkyard. Instead of giving up, they secretly continued protecting the city, and beneath the salvage yard, they created a hidden hangar and underground runway. They used spare parts, military surplus equipment and salvage machinery, and then slowly assembled their own aircraft, and that aircraft became the TurboKat. What made this even more impressive is that the jet regularly performed better than official Enforcer aircraft. Despite the fact that it was built from junkyard materials, it often outran, outgunned and outmaneuvered the city's military hardware. The TurboKat was basically proof that T-Bone and Razor are engineering geniuses, as they did not just build a working jet, they built one of the most capable aircraft in the entire world.
This guy obviously doesn't want to see Max re-elected.
What real aircraft inspired the TurboKat? The TurboKat may be fictional, but its design was heavily inspired by a real aircraft, and that aircraft was none other than the famous F-14 Tomcat. Even a quick look at the TurboKat revealed the similarities, as both the aircraft had twin engines, twin tail fins, and both used a two-seat cockpit arrangement, with one crew member in front and another in the back. However, the most obvious similarity was the wing design. The TurboKat used variable sweep wings just like the F-14. This meant that the wings could actually change position during flight. When slow, the wings extended outward, and this created more lift and gave the aircraft better control. And during high speed, the wings folded backward, and this reduced drag and allowed the jet to move much faster. This was not just a cool visual feature, real aircraft used variable sweep wings because different wing shapes performed better at different speeds. The creator of Swat cats clearly wanted the TurboKat to feel believable, and instead of inventing a completely unrealistic aircraft, they started with one of the most famous fighter jets ever built, and then upgraded it with cartoon technology, and the results felt much more realistic than many other animated vehicles from the same era. How fast is the TurboKat? The TurboKat was incredibly fast. The show never gave an exact normal top speed, but it was certainly a supersonic aircraft. Throughout the series, it consistently outran Enforcer fighters and kept up with many advanced villain vehicles. Its performance often appeared comparable to, or even better than, the real F-14 Tomcat, which could reach more than twice the speed of sound. But speed was only part of the story. The TurboKat could also perform vertical takeoff and landing, usually called VTOL, and this meant that it did not always need a long runway. The aircraft could hover in place, rise vertically into the air and land in tight spaces that would be impossible for a normal fighter jet. This gave T-Bone a huge advantage during missions, as Megacat City was full of skyscrapers, narrow streets, factories and crowded urban areas. Traditional fighters would struggle to operate in those environments, but the TurboKat could move through them much more easily. The hidden launch system also helped. When an emergency happened, T-Bone and Razor could rush underground, enter the aircraft, and launch through their secret runway in less than a minute. In many situations, they could be airborne before the Enforcers could even start preparing their own aircraft. How does the missile weapons bay work? The heart of the TurboKat was its weapons system. Unlike many fighter jets, the TurboKat was operated by two people who had very different jobs. T-Bone handled all the flying while Razor handled the fighting. From the rear cockpit, Razor controlled the missile weapons bay, which was one of the most creative weapon systems in cartoon history. What made it special was that Razor did not rely on standard military missiles. Instead, he had designed custom missiles which was made for specific situations. So if the enemy changed, the weapons changed as well. One of the most famous examples was the Octopus missile. Instead of exploding, it released mechanical tentacles that grabbed and restrained a target. The Bolo missile fired strong cables that wrapped around enemies and trapped them. Buzzsaw missiles deployed spinning blades that were capable of cutting through obstacles. Matchhead missiles created intense heat and fire. Scrambler missiles interfered with electronic systems. Cement missiles released fast, hardening cement that could lock targets in place. And in addition to that, there were also Banshee missiles, Spider missiles, and many other specialized weapons. This meant that every mission became a planning exercise, and Razor had to think ahead and decide what equipment would be needed even before the battle began. So, instead of carrying a few powerful weapons, the TurboCat carried solutions to different problems, and that flexibility was one of the biggest reasons the aircraft kept succeeding so often. Does the TurboCat have stealth capabilities? For a homemade aircraft, the TurboCat was surprisingly very difficult to detect, as its black paint scheme was not just there because it looked cool. Throughout the series, the jet repeatedly managed to operate without being easily tracked by the enforcers. The exact reason was never fully explained, but the aircraft appeared to have some form of stealth capability. Some sources even suggested that the dark coating may help reduce radar detection, and the shape of the aircraft could also play a role. Whatever the explanation may be, the result was clear. The TurboCat often moved through the city airspace without attracting immediate attention, and the rear cockpit also functioned as an electronic warfare station. Razor could monitor communications, intercept radio traffic, and manage various electronic systems, while T-Bone focused entirely on flying, and this division of responsibilities made the aircraft much more effective. The cockpit itself is also designed for visibility, and the large canopy gave both crew members a clear view of the environment around them, which helped them to react quickly during fast-moving situations. The TurboCat was not just fast and heavily armed, it was also surprisingly smart in the way it gathered and used information. What is the speed of heat mode? If the normal TurboCat seemed impressive, speed of heat mode was where things actually became crazy. At one point, the aircraft had received major upgrades that pushed its performance far beyond normal fighter jet levels. The most important addition was a set of 4 solid fuel rocket boosters. These extra power plants dramatically increased the aircraft's speed. According to information that was provided in the series, the upgraded TurboCat could reach around Mach 8, which was roughly 4,500 miles per hour, and that was several times faster than most military aircraft. Flying that fast created another problem, as air friction generated enormous amount of heat. To survive these conditions, the TurboCat received special heat shield protection, designed to prevent the aircraft from being damaged during extreme speed flights. The upgraded engines also allowed the jet to operate at very high altitudes, where normal aircraft engines would practically struggle. This mode was not intended for everyday missions. It was designed for situations where extreme speed was absolutely necessary. Even by cartoon standards, Mach 8 was a ridiculous level of performance, but somehow the TurboCat managed to make it work. What does the TurboCat carry besides missiles? The TurboCat was much more than a flying weapon platform. It was actually the center of the entire SWAT Cat's operation. One of its most famous support systems was the Cyclotron. The Cyclotron was a custom-built motorcycle that was stored inside the aircraft itself. When a mission moved to ground level, T-Bone could deploy the vehicle and continue the chase on the streets. This effectively gave the SWAT Cats a second specialized vehicle without needing to return to base. And then there was the Glovatrix. It was this wrist-mounted tool that was carried by both SWAT Cats during field operations. The Glovatrix contained small weapons, grappling systems, and various tools that helped them during ground missions. Even if they left the aircraft, they still had access to specialized equipment, and the TurboCat also included independent ejection seats. If the aircraft became too damaged to continue flying, T-Bone and Razor could easily escape separately and then continue the mission on foot. This was important because many SWAT Cats missions did not end in the air. Usually, the TurboCats got them to fight, but the action often continued on the ground. That is why the TurboCat was more than just a jet, as it carried everything T-Bone and Razor needed to handle a mission. What are the TurboCat's biggest weaknesses? Even though the TurboCat was very powerful, it still had its weaknesses. In fact, the series regularly showed that it had several weaknesses. One major weakness was missile vulnerability. While the aircraft could withstand certain attacks, direct missile strikes were a serious threat. The TurboCat got damaged, shot down, and heavily battered multiple times throughout the series. Fuel consumption was another issue. VTOL operations also required a lot of power. hovering in place and performing vertical takeoffs burned fuel faster than standard flights, and this meant that the aircraft's range would drop significantly when these systems were used heavily. The radar jamming systems also had limitations. They worked best at longer distances, but once enemies got close enough, detecting the TurboCat became a piece of cake. Heavy cargo operations would create problems as well, as carrying large loads or performing difficult lifting tasks reduced overall efficiency and flight range. More importantly, the TurboCat depended on constant maintenance because it was built from salvage materials. T-Bone and Razor were always repairing, upgrading, and rebuilding parts of the aircraft, and keeping the TurboCat running was almost as impressive as building it. How many times has the TurboCat been rebuilt? One of the most remarkable things about the TurboCat was how often it had survived disasters. Throughout the series, the aircraft was damaged repeatedly. It got hit during battles, it crashed, it suffered major system failures, and sometimes even entire sections had gotten destroyed. Yet somehow it always returned, and the reason was pretty simple. Since T-Bone and Razor had built it themselves, they knew the aircraft in and out. So whenever any damage occurred, they returned to the salvage yard and started rebuilding it. As the jet was already assembled from scavenged components in the first place, replacing damaged sections became a part of their normal routine. This created an interesting contrast with official military aircraft, because if an enforcer fighter got destroyed, replacing it required government resources and manufacturing facilities. On the other hand, if the TurboCat got damaged, its creators simply got to work. Over time, the aircraft almost became a living project, as it constantly changed, improved and evolved as new repairs and upgrades were added, and that ability to keep coming back was a major part of its identity. Why was SWAT Cats cancelled, and why is the TurboCat still famous? Despite having heavy popularity, SWAT Cats ended after only 2 seasons. But the cancellation was not really caused by poor ratings. Instead, it was largely the result of business decisions and budget concerns at Hanna-Barbera. The series was expensive to produce because of its detailed animation, action scenes, and aircraft sequences. Concerns about violence in children's programs also played an important role during that period. As a result, production had stopped in 1995, but the fanbase never really disappeared. SWAT Cats had developed one of the most loyal followings of any 1990s animated series. Fans had organised campaigns, written letters, signed petitions, and continued supporting the franchise even after it ended. Years later, an attempt was also made to revive the series through crowdfunding. The TurboCat remained one of the biggest reasons people still talk about the show today. Unlike many cartoon vehicles, it felt like something that could almost exist, as it had a believable design, understandable technology, real aviation influences, and clear strengths and weaknesses. More importantly, it reflected the personalities of the characters who built it. The TurboCat was fast because T-Bone loved flying, and it was adaptable because Razor loved inventing things. So the aircraft was basically both characters combined into a single machine, and that is exactly why fans still remembered it even decades later. And that was the TurboCat. It was built from scrap, hidden beneath a junkyard, flown by 2 of the best pilots Megacat City ever had after they were thrown out of the system. Armed with custom-built weapons, packed with unique gadgets, and capable of speeds that left most aircraft behind. What made the TurboCat special was not just its performance, it was actually the story behind it. 2 skilled mechanics who refused to quit, built their own fighter jet, and ended up creating something far better than anything the authorities had available. It was easily one of the most memorable aircraft in cartoon history, and one of the smartest vehicle designs that was ever put into an animated show. So, adios for now, and do let us know your favourite TurboCat weapon in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.